What's something unexplainable that you've experienced? I was stopped for the night at a truck shop in the desert. It was 60 miles east of El Paso, Texas. The truck stop has lights around the store and fuel pumps, but the truck parking area is only lit by truck headlights that are left on. I get to bed at about 10 p.m. thinking it'll be a nice, quiet night. And at 2 a.m. I wake up to a tapping on my truck, like someone was trying to wake me up. I ignore it and try to go back to sleep, but the tapping gets louder and louder, and eventually turns into the sound similar to someone beating their hand on my door. I get out of bed and open the curtains to the side I heard the sound coming from, and there was nothing there. I opened the curtains on the other side and nothing there either. There was no trucks on either side of me. So I throw my shoes on, grab my machete and flashlight and go outside to see what the hell was going on. There was nothing. No footprints, no paw prints, absolutely nothing there. I get back in my truck and turn on my side markers, so I'm somewhat illuminated. Close the doors, lock them, and run my seatbelts through the door handle and buckle them in, to add essentially another lock to both doors. I go back to bed, then wake up at 6 a.m. The sun is starting to come out, and I go inside for some coffee and breakfast before heading out. Other truck drivers were in there and experienced the same thing I did that night. No one had any answers as to what it was, so I finish my breakfast and yeet the F out of there. Bro, that seatbelt double locking idea is genius. If I can't pay my rent thanks to COVID and have to sleep in my car, I'm doing that. One time, I was gassing up my car at nighttime and there was a hospital across the road. A man with no shirt on, wearing proper suit pants and formal leather shoes ran from the dark across the road into the gas station. He was in there for 5 minutes, then sprinted back into the dark. I walk in to pay for my petrol, and the guy serving me tells me that the random guy in the suit pants paid for my $50 tank of gas. I had so many questions. I bought one pair of Bluetooth earbuds about 6 months ago. I received one pair. About 4 months ago, I went to use them and they wouldn't auto-connect to my phone. I paired them and that was that. Later, I found my other pair sitting on my desk. I've been quarantining alone. No idea where the extra set came from. You accidentally picked up someone else's thinking it's yours and brought it home. Case closed. Recently, I was on the couch watching TV with my cat when suddenly I heard a crash from my washer and dryer room. My cat also shot up and looked in the direction of the door. It sounded like a broom fell over, or maybe one of the plastic tubs. It freaked me out. I don't really like that room in the first place, plus it was very late at night and I live alone. I decided I was not going to be like every idiot in a horror movie and investigate what the noise was. I literally sat there on my couch for hours. The next day, I decided I had enough courage to take a peek and literally saw nothing touched. Both brooms were still propped up against the wall, all the plastic tubs were sitting perfectly. I have no idea what that noise was, and I don't really care to find out. I love that you didn't check it out. I am the same way. Ghosts and poltergeists would be so disappointed with me because I would never play along. I live in an old cottage and every few months I get the odd bang or odd things happen. I just say, nice try, I'm going back to bed now. When I first moved into our house, my mom gifted me with a snake plant. My cat and I have been together for 4 years and I had never once seen her puff up in fear. We had just moved in and my husband went to work at the crack of dawn, so I was up before the sun. I went to feed my cat and set her up on top of the dryer where she has her meals. She stared into the dark hallway behind me and immediately puffed up. I was so freaked out that I went through the whole house trying to find whatever it was that triggered her like that. Then I discovered a big chunk of the snake plant on the floor, full of little teeth marks. Snake plants make cats hallucinate. I took the plant to work and my cat hasn't puffed up since. As a kid, I had an imaginary friend who I would play with a lot. I had few real friends, but I was also more of an outcast in daycare and kindergarten. So sometimes that imaginary friend was all I had. My mother said I'd always describe him as very similar looking to me. When I was around preschool age, my mother said we needed to talk about my friend. I said that I'm fine with keeping Joshua around because I was scared of starting school alone. Her face just froze in shock and she never brought it up again. I didn't realize why until my grandma explained years after that I had a twin brother who didn't make it and my parents were planning on naming him Joshua. The only logical explanation I have is that I picked it up when I was very little, but my grandma said that my parents literally never talked about it because they did not cope well with the loss at all. It's still very strange. A few weeks before my granddad died, I started wearing 2 rings that I had inherited from a family member on a chain around my neck. I've had them for years and I always wear them when I feel like I need a bit of luck or support. It makes me feel as if someone is looking out for me, even though I don't really believe in the afterlife or the supernatural. So I was at work with another colleague about 2 feet away from me. I had the rings tucked well down my shirt, hanging right around heart level, with my uniform zipped up over them. And I was wearing a plastic apron on top of that too. I'm a nurse. I was busy doing something and my hands weren't anywhere near the rings. I wasn't even thinking about them. There wasn't any way I could have touched them or got them caught on anything. I felt something cold touch my stomach, and the next thing I knew, one of the rings had dropped onto the floor. I was confused at how it had happened, and I thought maybe the chain had broken, even though it's quite sturdy. I didn't want to lose it, so I took my apron and gloves off and pulled the chain out of my shirt. The chain was intact and still clasped tightly together, and the other ring was still on it. So somehow, one ring had come off cleanly off the chain without the other one falling off, and with the chain still clasped together. My colleague was just staring at me like, what the? I'm not really a believer in the supernatural, like I said, so I just cracked a joke saying, I hope that wasn't a sign or someone trying to tell me something, and laughed it off. Not even 5 minutes later, I got the call to say my granddad had deteriorated and I needed to come home. I left work that day to care for him, and 2 weeks later, he died. I know there's got to be an explanation for it, but part of me doesn't want to know it because the mystery makes me feel like maybe I was actually being looked out for. I wear the rings on my finger now because I can't shake the feeling that there was something more to that little mystery than the logical side of my brain wants to believe. And F the uniform policy. If anyone calls me out on it, I'll tell them that a ghost told me to wear the rings on my hands. Years ago, I went to the movies with my mother, and we decided to see another movie afterwards. It was a simpler time. My mom was calling my dad to tell him we would be home late. As she was on the phone with him, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and it said my mother's name. She definitely wasn't messing with me because she showed me her screen. She was already on a different call with my dad. We had just seen a horror film and I was too afraid to pick it up. Kinda wish I did though. But in retrospect, it was probably a numbers spoofing bot. Not sure those were as popular over a decade ago though, so I have no idea. When I was 5 months pregnant with my son, I had received a check and I was trying to use it to open a bank account. After we cashed it, we planned on eating at the Denny's next door. For some reason, the check wasn't able to be verified, so we went to another bank and had no issue cashing the check. We then ate at a different restaurant, as we were short on time. Unknown to us, that Denny's we were going to eat at wound up having an incident with a man who shot a few people, unfortunately including a woman who was 5 months pregnant. We found out a day later, and I'm still grateful that something prevented us from going. I feel awful for the people there. That was about 18 years ago. I was 9 years old, and I had a dream that I got home from a friend's house. As I opened the door, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a gray rat scamper along the side of my house. So I stand there a second just watching it. Then I look down, and a rattlesnake was right next to my leg. Of course, I panic and step back, but the snake strikes and bites my leg. I scream and roll around, and my leg burns. Even in the dream, it burned. My father comes out and sees me on the ground, and I tell him I was bit by a rattlesnake. He rushes me to the hospital. Time gets real strange, and I don't remember traveling to the hospital or checking in, but I end up on a bed and very distinctly getting a couple of doses of anti-venom. But it's still too late, and I die. I see my mother crying while holding my hand. I watch for a few minutes, then I wake up. Weird nightmare, right? But nothing to freak about. So I just go about my day playing with my friends and whatnot. When I was walking home that evening, I just randomly thought about my dream. I stopped a bit away from the door and actually looked around where the snake was in the dream. It was exactly where I dreamt he was, and he was staring at me, but never does rattle. Then a literal rat goes darting down the side of my house. I immediately change course and go to the front door instead. I tell my dad about the snake, he goes out and kills it with a shovel. I haven't had another dream that vivid of the future since. It still freaks me out though. When I was a kid, I would see a silhouette of a person standing on my doorway from time to time late at night. The figure never entered the room, but just kinda stood there and did not move. Normally, I'd just hide under the covers because its presence terrified me. I know that it wasn't a dream because my brother, who is the same age, can verify that he often saw the same thing. Because my brothers saw it too, and oftentimes the same night, that disproved that it could have been my imagination, or a hallucination, or even a dream. Also, the figure was taller than anyone else who lived in the house, and I also saw it at my grandparents' house. So it could not have been someone in my family either. I haven't seen it in years now, but I never really found an explanation for it. About 9 years ago, I was searching our file cabinet for a document I needed. I had piles of papers all over the bed, searched for an hour meticulously, could not find it. Suddenly, the TV across the room, which is not on, makes a clicking noise. I stop what I'm doing, look up, and over at the TV, I see nothing out of the ordinary, so I turn back to the pile of papers. And the document I had been searching for is right on top, like it was placed there. I looked up, said thank you, and put away the papers I did not need. Ugh, I can't take this anymore. Here's the dang paper. The ghost, probably. When my grandmother passed away, my parents and I cleaned out her house, and they moved in. We found a suitcase that my dad thought had the last of my grandfather's clothes. My grandfather died a few years before my brother and I were born, but I've always felt a strong connection to him. So I was really curious to see inside the suitcase. How big was my grandfather? What did he smell like? Unfortunately, the suitcase was locked. My dad said he'd look for the key, but we stuffed it under the bed and forgot about it. A couple of years go by and I stumble across the suitcase again. My dad hadn't found the key, but my brother has been learning a bit about locksmithing. I text him and ask if he would be interested in trying to open the suitcase. I'm still curious about what's inside. The suitcase was locked. I tried to open it multiple times, multiple ways. Couldn't get the thing open. I took it over to my parents for my brother to try to open on his next visit. My dad and I were standing outside talking when suddenly my dad falls silent, in awe. My brother was standing in the driveway wearing my grandfather's clothes. They fit him perfectly, except for being an inch too long in the hem. "Oh wow, how'd you get the suitcase open?" I asked. "It wasn't locked," he said. "It opened right up." Isn't this the coolest sweater? What can I say? Those clothes were meant to be his. Your grandfather must have been like, "No, not you, not you. Let him open it, dagnabbit." When I was in high school, I only drank coffee at work, which was a produce department in a grocery store. One day at home on a weekend morning, I decided to drink coffee while home for the first time. It was a big deal, because if I ever tried something new or different, I'd get the stupid comments from my parents. "Oh boy, Bucko is drinking coffee. Here comes the hair on his chest. It's gonna stunt your growth. No more juice boxes, etc., etc." But for some reason I can't explain, I placed a folded up paper towel on the counter in front of the coffee pot. My mom got coffee right after me and set her cup on the paper towel, poured her coffee, and her cup split in two, spilling the coffee. The paper towel absorbed almost all of the spill. One time, me, my brother, and mom were in a McDonald's drive-thru getting McFlurries when my brother pointed to the sky saying that there was a bike in the sky with a man riding on it, with balloons floating above, like an up. All three of us saw it. I swear it wasn't imaginary. Although my brother forgot this happened, me and my mom have not forgot. I thought you were going to say you went to McDonald's and the ice cream machine was actually working. I was laying in bed one morning, and I felt pure evil on the foot of my bed. I can't explain it, but it terrified and paralyzed me, making me like a deer in the headlights. My heart dropped and I felt the need to escape. It was early in the morning and my late husband was playing WoW on the computer in the living room. After a few minutes, I mustered the energy to run the F out of my room. I ran to my husband and grabbed him, sobbing about this thing. Not even 30 seconds later, we heard the smoke alarm go off and it smelled like sulfur and an electrical fire in the part of the room I felt that thing. Then, about a minute later, the smell passed. There was no fire, nothing amiss, and everything was fine. I didn't feel that thing anymore, and it just went away. I never felt anything like that before or since, and I had a witness, so I know I didn't imagine the whole thing. I simply can't explain it. I dream things that happen years in the future. Not even important events, just random interactions at random points in the future with people I haven't met yet at seemingly random locations. It's also happened multiple times and isn't just a one-off occurrence, which could have maybe been passed off as a coincidence. In my early 20s, I had a lot going on in my life. I had left school, had started a new career, was engaged to my high school sweetheart, and my anxiety was building up. That was in the mid-80s, and I wore a watch. It was a gold Timex analog watch that my father gave to me. I always set the watch on my bedside table before going to sleep. I was becoming very anxious about deadlines, and I found myself constantly checking my watch to make sure I didn't fall behind with anything. One morning, I woke up and reached to my bedside table, and my watch was missing. I checked around the table, I crawled over the edge on the bed and looked upside down under the bed. No watch. I got up and looked around the base of the bedside table. No watch. I showered, got dressed, checked my yesterday clothes pockets. No watch. I checked in other parts of the house. No watch. I asked my fiancée about if she had seen it. She had not, and to this day I know she was telling the truth. The strange thing is that this morning was the morning of my first day feeling like all anxiety was lifted from me. I felt 100% better about everything, and my stress level was even better than it had ever been. I felt 100% better about everything, and my stress level was even better than it had ever been. I never ever found the watch, and I've never worn one since.